All right, boys and girls, thanks for tuning in yet again. Today we're going to start learning about trigonometry, which I wrote the word right there. It just means triangle measure. We've done a lot with triangles in geometry, and that's going to continue with this unit. We're going to start with right triangles, just using right triangles, right triangle trig, and then eventually next week or so we'll move on to just regular triangles. This is brand new. I don't think anyone has ever done trig before. So every time I teach this, like I'm normally in class in front of you, I always tell kids, like, at the beginning, it's just going to seem weird. It's going to be unfamiliar. You might feel like it's like a different language or something. Like, usually the first day everyone's like, what in the world is going on? And they think it's the hardest thing ever. And then I always say, give it like a day or two at the most, and then you get it, and then everyone's like, oh my word, this is so easy, I love this. So as you're watching this video, if you start to feel a little bit of like anxiety rising up because you're like, I don't get it, I don't get it, just calm down, because I promise that you will get it. Also, the benefit of a video, you can pause at any time, you can rewind if you need me to say what I just said a couple times. You can watch this as many times as you want, and I won't get frustrated because it's not actually me repeating myself, right? Of course, the not benefit of a video is that I can't see your faces, so I don't know if you're understanding what I'm saying or need a different explanation, but I'll try and be as thorough as possible, which means this video might be a little bit longer than the ones you've been used to. But I have to go in detail because, like I said, this is totally new. So I posted these notes for you. If you want to print them out and just follow along, that's great. They are in color, so if your parents are a little bit leery about having you use so much colored ink, just print it in black and white, or you can just copy along. Just all you're gonna have to do is draw triangles, so you can just fill this in like a tablet or something. So let's just quick review here. What kind of triangle is this? Clearly it's a right triangle. We know that because of the 90-degree angle. So just a reminder that the hypotenuse in a right triangle is always across from the right angle. It's always the longest side. Okay, so the other two sides of this triangle are both of the legs, and we are going to be labeling those legs in about 5 seconds. Okay. So, like I just said, labeling the sides. So as we're working on right triangle trig problems, we're always going to have a reference angle, okay? That reference angle will be one of the acute angles of the triangle, okay? So you will know what your reference angle is. That's not going to be something that you have to figure out yourself. But we're going to be setting up ratios in regards to the reference angle, okay? So we'll be setting up ratios or fractions of the sides of the triangles, but in order to do that, we have to label the sides, and we'll be labeling them all based off the reference angle. So let me first tell you, we're going to be labeling the hypotenuse, which that one should be an easy side to label. Then we're going to label the adjacent side and the opposite side. Okay, so let's just say that our reference angle is that guy right there. Okay, I believe I said this, but if I didn't, it will only be or always be just one of the acute angles. Okay, the right angle will not be your reference angle. So if this is my reference angle, I need to now label these three sides of the triangle. Well, let's start with the hypotenuse, of course, because the hypotenuse is always going to be the side across from the right angle. Okay, so now we just have to label the adjacent and the opposite side. Now, if I give you $5 just to guess which side would be which, I bet you could figure it out. If you know what the word adjacent means, of course, that's important. Adjacent just means like right beside. So if this is my reference angle, this is going to be the adjacent side. And this will be the opposite side. Okay, that's it. The opposite side is the side that's across from the angle. The adjacent side is the one that's beside the angle. Or I always say, if you're marking your reference angle with a swoosh, which you don't necessarily have to do, but I always do it because I'm just a visual person and I need that there. Your swoosh is going to hit two sides, okay? It's always going to hit the hypotenuse and the adjacent side. Your swoosh will not go through the opposite side. So that's just another way to determine your sides as well. So in this triangle, let's say this is the adjacent, or what? This is the reference angle, okay? Now, since that's my reference angle, I need to label the three sides accordingly. This is still the hypotenuse. That doesn't change. But if you notice, my swoosh here went through this side. So this is now the adjacent side. And this is now the opposite side. Okay, so those two legs just switched their labels when the reference angle changed. Okay, so there it is. There's our first part. Okay. So I'm going to go over what the trig ratios are, and then I'm going to do some examples of just labeling the sides of the triangles and setting up our ratios, okay? But these are the these are the three trig ratios that we're going to be working with. The sine, the cosine, and the tangent. Okay, like I said, I know it looks very weird. You might be a little freaked out right now because you're like, I never saw those words before, and what is that symbol? This symbol is just called theta. It's a Greek letter, which usually just refers to like an angle of some kind. It could just be like the sign of X, or the sign of Z, or the sign of smiley face. But this is representing one of the angles in the triangle, as you can see here, marked there with also the theta. So we're going to be finding the sine of this angle, the cosine of this angle, and the tangent of this angle, and those are going to be the ratios that we're setting up with the sides of the triangle. Okay, if you want to just pause the video and copy these ratios down, I'm going to obviously explain like what they mean and where they come from, but you will want to have these in front of you as you're working on your problems. So this is the sine. This is how we abbreviate it as just sin. I still refer to it as sine. And the ratio is the opposite side over the hypotenuse, right? Those two sides of the triangle. The cosine, or just the cos of theta, is the adjacent side over the hypotenuse. And the tangent, or the tan of theta, is the opposite side over the adjacent side, okay? If you get into pre-calc, there are some other trig ratios that you might use, but we just stick with these three in geometry, okay? All right, now the thing is, you do have to memorize those ratios. I mean, okay, for our purposes here, while we're learning virtually, you can have them in front of you. You're not going to have a test or anything, but they are good just to know. So this is a mnemonic device to remember your ratios. I always call this SOHCAHTOA. So the way that this works, if we kind of break it down, so the so part, this is referring to the sine ratio, which is the opposite over the hypotenuse. Okay, sine is O over H. You could write it like that with a fraction bar if you wanted. The ka, so ka is referring to the cosine, which is the adjacent side over the hypotenuse. So again, cosine is A over H. And then TOA is referring to the tangent, which is the opposite side over the adjacent side. So SOHCAHTOA, there it is, just a way to help you remember how to set them up. Plus, it's just fun to say. But a way to remember what order these letters go in, I just remember my physics teacher always saying this. Some old horse caught another horse taking oats away. So that's just a silly phrase to help you remember how to spell SOHCAHTOA. And then once you spell it, this is what it stands for. Oh, let's just put that fraction bar. So there you go. Again, you can just have this in front of you as you're working through all your problems. You don't necessarily have to memorize SOHCAHTOA, I guess, but like I said, it's fun to say. And I had a student once that said it sounds like you're saying suck your toe off. So, of course, the phrase has been ruined for me ever since because that sounds disgusting. Also, that student was Lindsay Moosh, which I believe is a senior this year. So, if you know her, you can make fun of her. All right, so on this last page, well, it's the last one I'm going to do for these set of notes. Then you're going to stop. You're going to practice what we've learned. And then tomorrow I'm going to finish, or I'm going to make a video that will finish the last 2 pages. So I think it's a little overwhelming if you just do it all at one shot. So that's why I'm splitting it up like this. So we have a triangle. Okay, and all we're going to do right now with our triangle is just set up our trig ratios, okay? So if you want to do that, the first thing you have to do is mark your reference angle. Now it says find the trig functions for angle A and angle B. We're just going to start with angle A. So let's mark angle A as our reference angle. Now once we do that, we now have to label the sides, right? If we want the ratios, we have to know which side is which. So the 13 is our hypotenuse. The 5 is the adjacent side, and 12 is the opposite side. Okay, now I'm going to find the sine of A, the cosine of A, and the tangent of A, just using our sides of the triangle. So the sine, I even have it here for you for your convenience. The sine is the opposite over the hypotenuse. Instead of writing out the words, I'm just going to substitute the numbers that I have here from the triangle. So O over H, in this case, it is 12 over 13. So the sine of A is just 12 over 13. Wonderful. The cosine is A over H. In this case, it's 5 over 13. The tangent of A is O over A, opposite over adjacent. In this case, 12 over 5. Boom. That's it. That's how simple it is. Oh, is that bad? Okay, now I just drew the triangle again so that we could do the same thing, but using angle B as our reference angle. So maybe you could just pause the video, label your sides, and write your ratios, right? And then watch it back and see if you got it correct. Right, so this is my reference angle. The 13 stays the hypotenuse. 5 is now the opposite side, and the 12 is now the adjacent, right? They just switched. So the sine of B is opposite over hypotenuse, in this case, 5 over 13. The cosine of B is the adjacent over the hypotenuse, in this case, 12 over 13. And the tangent of B, opposite over adjacent, in this triangle, that's 5 over 12. Okay? So that's it. That's your first step in trigonometry. So once you finish this video and you feel like you understand this part of just like labeling your sides and writing your ratios, you're going to go to the Trig Basics packet, it's like 2 pages, that I've posted, and you're just going to do problems 1 to 12, okay? That's just setting up the ratios. Make sure when you write your ratios, you just simplify your fractions. And when you're doing those problems, I think, well, I know it just asks for a specific one. It may say like the tangent of A or the sine of X. It's just asking for that specific one, but if you want to write all 3, that's great practice. Like, feel free. When you're doing those problems, it will give you like a capital letter, like the sine of B. So then in the triangle, you want to just mark your reference angle, whichever one is B, and then label your sides and go from there. All right, I hope it makes sense. Thanks for watching.